I'm back already. Welcome back to Ground Zero Salem. I'm your host, Pat. I wanted to give a stab at doing an actual review, like a full, proper review. Usually I give these short little kind of half-assed mini reviews. Don't always know what the fuck I'm talking about, but I like to talk about music. Waiting for me on my doorstep when I got back from Seattle were a bunch of packages, half soaked from the rain. It was nice that my postal carrier got my little note on the mailbox saying, please put stuff on the back porch during my vacation. However, it would have been better if my postal carrier actually put them fully on the back porch and not halfway on the steps. Thankfully, the folks at Nuclear War Now are good with packaging stuff super layered in big boxes with peanuts and all that, so my brand new Dr. Shrinker collections were undamaged. Archive 1 and Archive 2. I wanted to give these a proper in-depth review, try my hand at that, and also just kind of maybe offer a retrospective on all of their releases, official and not up to this point. I am fucking nuts about this band. They were a very underrated death metal band from Milwaukee between the years of, I think, around 1987 to 1990. A lot like Time Ghoul, they've gotten a lot more respect and accolades in the past 10 years or so with more people getting into older death metal and all the tape trading era bands. In my opinion, there's not really too many bands that sound like them, sound exactly like them. I think they're pretty much in a league of their own. And I wanted to get into these excellent reissues from Nuclear War Now, which I will in a moment. This is a Diehard that came with both gatefolds. Came in this lovely Gunmen tote bag, NPR War Now. I'll get into that in a sec. Up until this reissue came to light, only this CD was available from Necroharmonic. This came out in 2004, Grotesque Wedlock. This had the Wedding the Grotesque demo, the Eponym Demo, and their first demo on it. I've had this for some time. I discovered it a little over a decade ago, I think, when I was getting back into death metal. And, for the record, I never really was into this band back in the 90s. I had no idea that they were a thing. By the time I was getting into death metal, they were no more. And the flow of information about music was not as good as it is now, to say the least. So I picked this up. It's a decent, decent product put out by Necroharmonic. I don't think the demos were really remastered or anything much on it, but it's the essential stuff. What we're listening to right now is Contorted Dioramic Palette, which came out on Dread Records, I think, a few years ago, 2015. It's a re-recording of 5 songs of their old material and a couple of new ones. Sounds great. Didn't miss a beat. The new songs are excellent. The old songs sound completely refreshed. Awesome release. If you can hear in the background, every bit is savage. Everything's a lot more clear. The playing is fucking incredible on it. I also have this bootleg of the Eponym Demo from 1990. Great. Some of their more mature stuff after the Wedding the Grotesque demo. Can't remember where I picked up this boot. I think it might have been Hell's Headbangers. Just blank labels. No insert. Little blurb on the back. Unique style of death metal with dark atmospheric qualities and original vocals still sounds fresh and interesting today as much as the day it was released. Very true. And then there was one session they did for something that never came out. It was intended to come out on Necrosis record, which is a subsidiary of Earache Records, and was shelved. And this came out as a split with Nunslaughter. I've shown this off before. Cool picture disc on Hell's Headbangers. So the meat of what I want to talk about are these reissues on Nuclear War Now, which includes all this stuff except for this one here, Contorted Dioramic Palette, and more. So we have Archive 1. This has a live demo from 1988, the Recognition demo, that's their first demo from 1988, and a rehearsal from 1990. Beautiful gatefold with the lyrics, live shot. Comes with a poster. I actually will bother to unfold this. Fucking cool. Flyer art. The whole shebang also includes this zine booklet with a great comprehensive history of the band and a lot of old flyers. The whole story from when they started, lineup changes. They lost two of the original members after wedding the Grotesque before the Eponym and absorbed a couple of the guys from another great Milwaukee death metal band, Phantasm. And their sound did significantly change before the Eponym, and I'll get into that momentarily. I was, a little cagey. I'm not so into buying like crazy Diehard editions that have rehearsals and live stuff, because sometimes the quality of those can be quite terrible. Charles Manson, everybody. I was a little apprehensive, but the live stuff on all these are awesome. The rehearsal stuff, the live demo is great. You can tell that the vocalist has a sense of humor. There's some great stage banter. He talks about how Rawhead Rex, the song Rawhead Rex, which is quite possibly their best song, depending on your subjective opinion, is not about the movie. It's about the original Clive Barker story from Books of Blood, which is good because the story rules and the movie fucking is not that great. The Diehard came out on red vinyl and these very nice anti-static inner sleeves. And each custom center label has artwork from the corresponding demos, which is cool. Nice red vinyl. I would have just bought the two separately on black, because I'm not really that into bells and whistles these days, but it was like $5 more, so why the fuck not? As far as the music, which is the most important thing, Dr. Shrinker had a very short lifespan and went through some pretty significant changes in sound between all their demos. Their earliest demo is kind of the beginning of their evolution into death metal from probably what best could be described as demented crossover thrash. I could throw up some comparisons to The Accused, which I seem to do often to a lot of bands. I think it's because The Accused are one of my favorite bands. But certainly the vocal delivery is very Blame Fart inspired, Cryptic Slaughter, stuff like that. These guys weren't one of the first bands to sort of expand into death metal territory. They came around 87, 88. They were super early, but Death, Scream, Bloody Gore was a thing. Napalm Death were starting, although albeit more in the grind realm, but they certainly had an influence on death metal at the time. Necrophagia, Deathstrike, Autopsy. These guys were in a league of their own, though. I really don't think that I don't think any of those bands sound the same, which is kind of the great thing about any genre in its infancy. Everybody's kind of contributing something different. But the soundboard recordings from the first 7 tracks are fantastic. This is all very rough, raw, and lo-fi. The mastering and everything sounds wonderful. It sounds beautiful on vinyl, but don't expect pretty production on this. Expect like murky, swampy, kind of buried guitars here and there. But the riffs are so strong that they pop right out of the recording. The soundboard recordings on the live demo from 1988 sound great. Stage banter's awesome. The recognition demo actually sounds kind of worse. It's the first thing they did. It was definitely, seems to be, according to the liner notes, a little rushed. You know, they hadn't been a band for that long at that point. And then there's a rehearsal from 1990, which kind of bridges the gap between the Wedding the Grotesque stuff and the Eponym demo. They have Tighten the Tourniquet on there, which is when they started kind of expanding their sound, slowing down a bit, getting a little bit more weird and twisted and psychedelic and technical and very just weird, like insidious, creepy, awesome stuff. And then on the second LP, you have all the demos, all the proper demos, aside from the first one. You know, nice little hype stickers on there. And I'm giving you the story. Collection of more developed and bizarre demos of legendary Wisconsin death metal dealers, Dr. Shrinker, perverse hymns of murderous putrefaction, death metal for death metal fiends. Same kind of layout with this one. You know, if you hold up the two side by side, the guys are facing each other. More Charles Manson here. Some of the same samples are on the original demos as well. You know, the first song off of Wedding the Grotesque is called Tools of the Trade, so you got an influence on Carcass right there. Another poster in this. This is fucking great. Got the same art on a t-shirt that I got with the order inspired by the song Chunk Blower, which was lyrical content involved somebody that saw a murder and was so disgusted and nauseated that they threw up all their internal organs. Great topical subject matter there. These are also on red. And again, you have snippets of the demo art on the custom center labels. So the Wedding to Grotesque demo is one of my favorite death metal recordings. Bare bones, raw, technically precise, but there's so much buried in the recording that it just creates this crazy vibe. It's not held back by the raw recording at all. I doubt that it was recorded on more than 16 tracks, possibly 8. I couldn't find any information on that. Just this gnarly guitar tone that is extremely thick and heavy, giving Repulsion and Nihilist a run for their money. The music was still 1 foot in thrash on Wedding the Grotesque. There's that very tight, you know, kind of palm-muted triple picking, but not really adhering to the verse-chorus sort of paradigm at all. There are songs that have that, namely Chunk Blower and Rawhead Rex, which is a great fucking song. But if you look at like the title song, Wedding to Grotesque, which is about Charles Manson, there's a lot of slower, dirtier parts and a lot of more exploratory, kind of experimental stuff going on with the songwriting. The vocals are shrieky. You know, I feel like there's some inspiration taken by like the more, you know, higher end kind of crossover vocalists. Like I said, Blaine from the Accused, the vocalist from Cryptic Slaughter, but it's got more of a Crypt Keeper, occasionally sort of guttural, ringing out, enunciating kind of going on. Their first demo was more inspired by Cold War, kind of typical hardcore kind of stuff with a few horror elements. And they really dive headfirst into, you know, horror stuff on this. The aforementioned Rawhead Rex, Dead by Dawn, Open Heart Surgery, Tools of the Trade. I mean, all this has some in common with Carcass, and I can also see similarities with early Carcass, the first 2 Carcass records. Maybe not so much in musical style, but definitely in spirit. That it's also kind of tongue-in-cheek. You know, they're not really going out of their way to be scary dudes. You know, there's sort of a black sense of humor. Not goofy, but there's a bit of a black sense of humor going on with the lyrics. and just the general attitude, the general vibe. And then the last side of this, the side D of this, is the Eponym Demo, followed by the last song that they recorded, which was for the Necrosis record section. And it doesn't really say what happened in the booklet. They're being courted by Earache through Necrosis Records. Necrosis put out, very short-lived, but put out some good stuff. They put out Electro Hippies first. I think that was their first recording that they released. They put out Repulsion Horrified several times. Carnage Dark Recollections, a few others that are slipping my mind at the moment. Run by Jeff Walker and Bill Steer from Carcass. The Necrosis session song, Our Necropsy, was for a sampler that was shelved. It says the DAT tapes were lost. The version that's on that split with Nunslaughter sounds like it's from a dubbed cassette, and I was really pleased to hear that this version does not sound like that at all. It sounds very clear. Definitely the Eponym songs and Our Necropsy are the best sounding recording-wise songs on this, and they're great, and they definitely changed leaps and bounds. It's a shame that they don't have an album's worth of material that sound like that. It gets considerably more technical, like I mentioned, and sort of like psychedelic. I've read several interviews with the band. There was a lot more drug experimentation going on. People were getting more into Zappa and shit like that. And you can sort of think of it in the same general universe as like Atheists and stuff that got kind of weird early on, maybe even Time Ghoul. But it doesn't sound like that. It's not really trying to be sort of otherworldly or sci-fi thematically. It's just very technical, twisted, and strange. I mentioned it a few updates back. There's that band Mass Psychosis, who later had to change their name to Psychosis from Jersey, and they had a similar kind of twisted thing going on, almost like a weird evil circus where people are getting murdered. I don't know. That's the best description I can come up with at the moment. But this is a highly recommended collection. I was very pleasantly surprised that, often I've had my heart broken by demo tracks, and especially live recordings and rehearsals and stuff. There's very few rehearsals that I can really tolerate the sound of. I like raw recordings, but, these guys were just so tight with what they did, the style that they played, and their musicianship was so top-notch that it all rung through regardless of what the recording quality was. And I like this re-recorded stuff. It's really good. It's nice that they actually got a shot and got a second life to do things where all the instrumentation was clear. But I almost like the stuff from these collections just because it's, you hear something new every time because there's just so much going on. The muffling and the noise, and the guitars are kind of buried, and there's this weird effect on the vocals on a bunch of songs where it echoes out, and it just sounds really fucking creepy and really just necrotic and fucking gross. Right up there with fucking Slaughter, right up there with fucking Repulsion. I mean, just as fucking vital. Just, they didn't really start getting the props till recently, and hopefully with the release of this they'll continue to, because this band was fucking great. So, I don't know. For me, this band and this release is a 10 out of 10. Check it out. Get into it. I hope you like my first review. Talk to you guys soon. Ground Zero out.